Do you remember how it used to feel? Those nights when everything just flowed, when being together felt natural, effortless, real. You didn't question it. You didn't overthink it. You just felt it, and that was enough. But here's something strange. Studies show that most people, almost everyone, reach a point where something starts to feel missing, even when nothing is technically wrong. And maybe you're there right now. Because nothing ended, right? No big fight. No clear reason. But still, something feels off. So if everything is still there, why does it feel like something important is gone? Because that feeling, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It builds, slowly, in moments you barely notice at first. You're sitting next to them, but your mind feels somewhere else. You're talking, but it doesn't feel like you're really connecting. You're together, but something inside you feels quiet. And the confusing part? Nothing is technically wrong. They're still there. The relationship still exists. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside, it doesn't feel the same. You start noticing it in small ways. The conversations aren't as deep. The laughter doesn't last as long. The attention feels divided. And you don't say anything, because what would you even say? There's no clear problem, no obvious reason. No moment you can point to and say, this is where it broke. So instead, you keep going. You act normal. You respond the same way. You show up like nothing changed, but something did. You feel it when they don't really listen anymore, when your words don't land the same, when they stop asking about things that matter to you, and at first, you ignore it because it's easier. Easier to believe it's just a phase. Easier to tell yourself you're overthinking. Easier to hold on to what it used to be. Because you remember how it felt in the beginning. The way everything seemed effortless. The way time passed without you noticing. The way being with them felt complete. And that memory, it keeps you there. Even when the present feels different, you start comparing. Not intentionally, but naturally. You compare how it used to feel to how it feels now. And that gap, it's small at first. Almost unnoticeable, but over time, it grows. You feel it in the silence between messages, in the lack of excitement, and the way things feel routine, not bad, just empty. And that's what makes it hard. Because if it were bad, you'd leave. If it were painful, you'd react. But this is subtle. This is quiet. This is something you feel, but can't fully explain. And because of that, you stay. You stay in conversations that don't fulfill you. You stay in moments that feel incomplete. You stay in something that still exists, but doesn't feel alive. And slowly, you begin to adjust. You stop expecting too much. You stop looking for depth. You stop asking for more. Not because you don't want it, but because you've stopped believing it's there. And that's where it starts to change you. You become quieter, more distant, less expressive. You hold things in because it doesn't feel like they'll land the same way. And even though nothing ended, something inside you begins to disconnect, not all at once, but little by little, until one day, you realize something uncomfortable. You're not reacting to what's happening now. You're reacting to what's missing. Because this isn't about what you have. It's about what you lost without even noticing when it disappeared. And once you start seeing it that way, everything begins to feel different. Not just them, but you. The way you respond, the way you think, the way you stay, even when it doesn't feel right anymore. Because now, you're not just in the relationship. You're aware of the distance inside it, and that awareness, it doesn't go away. It stays quiet, but constant. And the more you feel it, the harder it becomes to ignore, because now you're not asking what's wrong. You're starting to ask something deeper, something more honest, something that leads you to the next realization. And that's where everything begins to unfold. And that's what makes this so hard to understand. Because you remember not just the person, but the feeling. The way it used to be in the beginning, when everything felt light, when being together didn't require effort, when you didn't have to think about what to say or how to act. It just happened naturally. You remember the conversations that lasted for hours and still didn't feel like enough? The kind where time disappeared and nothing else mattered. You remember the way they looked at you, like they were fully there? Not distracted, not divided, just present. And that kind of presence, it's rare, because when it's real, you don't question it. You don't analyze it. You don't second guess it. You feel it in the way they respond, in the way they listen, in the way they make space for you without you asking. And maybe that's why it felt so different, because it wasn't about perfection. It wasn't flawless. There were small misunderstandings, little moments that didn't go as planned. But even in those moments, it still felt right. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. And that's the part that stays with you, not the details, not the exact words, but the feeling. The feeling of being connected, the feeling of being chosen, the feeling of being fully there with someone who is fully there too. And once you felt that, you don't forget it. You carry it with you. You measure everything against it, even when you don't realize you're doing it, because that feeling sets a standard, not a perfect standard, but a real one. And now, when things don't feel like that anymore, you notice, even if you don't say it, even if you try to ignore it, you feel the difference between what it was and what it is now. And that gap, it doesn't need words. It shows up in moments, in the way conversations feel shorter, in the way attention fades quicker, in the way presence becomes inconsistent. You start remembering how easy it used to be and comparing it to how forced it feels now. And that comparison, it creates something inside you, not anger, not frustration, something quieter, something heavier, a kind of sadness you can't fully explain, because you're not just missing the person, you're missing how it felt to be with them. You're missing the version of the relationship that felt alive. And that's what makes it so difficult to let go, because you know it existed, you felt it, you lived it, and part of you still believes it could come back. That maybe it's still there somewhere. That maybe this is just a phase. That maybe things will return to how they used to be. So you hold on to that memory, you revisit it, you replay it, you use it as a reason to stay, because if it was real once, maybe it can be real again. But that's where things start to shift, because memory, it doesn't always reflect the present. And holding on to what it used to be can make it harder to see what it actually is now. Because while you're focused on what you felt before, you don't fully see what you're feeling now. And those two things, they're not the same anymore. And deep down, you already know that. You feel it in the quiet moments, in the pauses, in the lack of something that used to come naturally. Because real connection doesn't have to be recreated constantly. It either exists or it fades. And when it fades, it doesn't disappear all at once. It becomes less frequent, less intense, less present, until one day, you're not living it anymore. You're remembering it. And that realization, it doesn't come easily, because letting go of a memory like that feels like letting go of something that mattered, something that was real, something that meant something. But the truth is, what was real then isn't always real now. And holding on to it can keep you stuck in something that no longer feels the same. And that's where things begin to change again, because once you see the difference between what it was and what it is, you can't ignore it anymore. You can't pretend it's just a phase. You can't convince yourself it's still the same. Because now, you're not just remembering the past. You're starting to notice the present and what's happening in it. Because something didn't break. Something didn't explode. Something just started to change, quietly, gradually, almost without you noticing. And that's where the next part begins. And that's the part most people miss, because it didn't break. It didn't end. It didn't collapse in a single moment. It just started changing, quietly, in ways that were easy to ignore at first. You didn't wake up one day and feel completely different. It was slower than that, subtle. The conversations became shorter. The energy felt a little off. The effort didn't come as naturally anymore, but nothing dramatic happened. No argument. No clear turning point. Just small shifts that slowly became patterns. And that's what made it confusing. Because when something ends loudly, you react. But when it changes quietly, you adapt. You tell yourself it's nothing. That people get busy. That life gets in the way. That not everything can stay the same. So you adjust your expectations. You accept less attention, less depth, less presence. Not all at once, but little by little, because each change feels small on its own, almost unnoticeable, until you step back and realize how much has actually changed. You notice that conversations don't go as deep anymore, that silence lasts longer, that moments that used to feel meaningful now feel routine. And the hardest part, you're both still there, still talking, still spending time together, still technically in the relationship, but something feels missing. Something that used to be automatic now feels like it has to be forced, and that difference, it stays with you because you don't just feel what's there. You feel what's not there anymore. You feel the lack of presence, the lack of attention, the lack of connection, and that's what makes it so hard to explain. Because nothing is clearly wrong, but nothing feels right either. Nothing dramatic happened, but something stopped feeling the same. And that sentence, it captures everything. Because you're not reacting to an event, you're reacting to a shift. A shift in energy and behavior and how someone shows up. And once that shift begins, it doesn't reverse on its own. It continues, slowly, almost quietly, until it becomes the new normal. You get used to it. Used to shorter conversations. Used to less effort. Used to feeling like something is missing, but not knowing how to fix it. And instead of questioning it, you adapt to it. Because adapting feels easier than confronting. Easier than asking uncomfortable questions. Easier than risking answers you might not want to hear. So you keep going. You keep showing up. You keep acting like everything is fine. Even when part of you knows it isn't, and that's where it starts to affect you. Not just how you see the relationship, but how you experience it. You become more aware, more sensitive to the changes, more aware of the distance. You start noticing things you didn't notice before. The lack of enthusiasm, the lack of curiosity, the lack of effort that used to be there naturally. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them, because now it's not just a feeling, it's a pattern, and that pattern, it leads you somewhere deeper, because at some point, you stop asking what changed and start asking something else, something more personal, something harder. Why am I still here if it doesn't feel the same anymore? And that question, it doesn't just sit there, it grows. Because once you start asking it, you're no longer just observing the relationship, you're questioning your place in it. And that's where things begin to go even deeper, because now it's not just about the change. It's about your decision to stay, even after you felt it. And that's where things shift in a way you didn't expect. Because once you notice the change, Once you feel that something isn't the same anymore, you don't leave, you stay. At first, it doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like patience, like understanding, like giving something time to come back. So you keep showing up, you start the conversations, you try to bring the energy back, you put in a little more effort, hoping it balances things out, because part of you believes if you just try a little harder, if you just give a little more, it will feel like it used to again. So you adjust, you become more present, more attentive, more willing to make things work. But something strange starts to happen. The more you give, the more you notice the gap, because your effort isn't being matched. Your energy isn't being reflected back the same way. And that's when it stops feeling mutual, not suddenly, but gradually. You start to feel like you're the one holding things together, like you're the one keeping the conversation alive, keeping the connection from fading completely, and that realization. It's uncomfortable, because now you're not just noticing the change, you're responding to it, you're trying to fix it, trying to recreate something that used to be natural, and that changes your role completely. You're no longer just part of the relationship. You're managing it alone. You think more about what to say, more about how to act, more about how not to push them away. You become careful, you filter yourself, you hold back certain thoughts because you don't want to create distance, even though that distance is already there, and without realizing it, you start losing something, not them, yourself. You stop being as open, as spontaneous, as real as you used to be, because now everything feels like it has consequences. Every word, every reaction, every moment. You start questioning yourself. Am I doing too much? Am I expecting too much? Should I just give it more time? And those questions, they keep you stuck, because instead of looking at what's happening clearly, you turn inward. You make it about you, about what you could do better, what you could change, what you could fix. But the truth is, you're not fixing anything. You're adapting to something that's already changed. And the more you adapt, the more disconnected you become from what you feel, from what you need, from what you once knew was real. Because now, you're not staying because it feels right. You're staying because you're trying to bring something back, something that may not be there anymore. And that's where it gets heavy, because the more you try, the more you start to realize something uncomfortable. Effort doesn't recreate connection. It only exposes when it's no longer mutual. And once you see that, once you feel that imbalance clearly, something inside you begins to shift, not loudly, but deeply. Because now, it's not just about what changed between you. It's about what's happening inside you because of it. Because trying to hold on to something alone, it doesn't just drain you, it changes you. And eventually, you start to see it, not just the relationship, but your place in it. And that's where everything begins to lead to one final realization. And that's where the truth finally becomes impossible to ignore. Not because something new happens, but because you stop pretending you don't see it. You stop telling yourself it's just a phase. You stop explaining the distance. You stop holding on to the version of it that only exists in your memory. And for the first time, you look at it as it is. Not how it used to feel. Not how you wish it still felt. But how it actually feels now. And that moment, it changes everything. Because now there's no confusion. No, maybe it'll go back. No, maybe I just need to try more. Just clarity. Clear enough to see that you're still there, but the feeling isn't clear enough to understand that the connection didn't suddenly disappear. It slowly faded in attention and presence, in effort, until what's left is something that looks like a relationship, but doesn't feel like one anymore. And that realization, it's heavy, because now you're not asking what's missing. You already know. You're feeling it every day, in the silence, in the distance, in the lack of something that used to be natural. And once you accept that, another truth starts to surface. You didn't just stay because of the memories. You stayed because you believed those memories still meant something in the present, because if it was real once, it had to still be there, right? But now you see it differently. Memories don't keep something alive. They just remind you of what it used to be, and holding on to them can keep you stuck in something that no longer feels real. Because you're not living those moments anymore, you're remembering them. And there's a difference, a big one, because remembering something beautiful doesn't make what you have now feel the same. And that's the moment everything shifts, not when they change, not when the relationship fades, but when you stop confusing the past with the present, when you stop using memories as a reason to stay, when you stop telling yourself it was good, so it must still be good. Because now, you're not looking at what it was. You're looking at what it is, and that truth. It's quiet, but it's clear. You're still there. They're still there. But the feeling, the connection, the thing that made it real isn't the same anymore. And once you truly see that, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending everything is fine. You can't keep ignoring the distance. You can't keep calling it the same thing, because now you're not holding on to hope. You're holding on to awareness. And awareness doesn't let you stay comfortable. It pushes you. It forces you to confront something you've been avoiding. Not about them, but about you. About why you're still there. About what you're still holding on to. About what you're afraid to face if you let go. Because now it's no longer about what happened between you. It's about what you're choosing now that you see it clearly. And that's where everything leads. Not to another explanation. Not to another attempt. But to a decision you can't avoid anymore. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. Not that the relationship changed, but that you felt it changing and stayed anyway. Because the truth is, good memories can stay with you forever. They can still feel real. They can still mean something, but that doesn't mean what you have today feels the same. And deep down, you know the difference. You feel it in the silence, in the distance, in the way something that once felt alive now just feels there. The hardest truth is this: good memories don't mean it still feels real. And once you understand that, you stop asking what happened to us and start asking something more honest. What am I still holding on to that no longer exists in the present? Because staying, just because it was once good, can quietly keep you stuck in something that no longer feels right. So if this felt real to you, if at any moment you recognized your own story in this, comment the word realized, not as pain, but as awareness. And if this gave you clarity, even a little, leave a like and subscribe. Because sometimes the moment you stop holding on to what it used to be is the moment you finally see what it truly is.